Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome all of us to this important occasion today. Today, One Africa Initiative is celebrating Africa Day. The history of Africa Day is a very long one. It was first mooted by OAU, Organization of African Unity. They used to call it African Liberation Day. The whole essence of the day is to celebrate the victory of African countries over slavery and colonialism. Then worldwide today, African Day has become a very popular day that is very important in the lives of all of us Africans. It comes on every May 25th of every year. One Africa Initiative has decided to have this program today so that we can actually look at where we are coming from, where we are today, and where we are headed. Yes, true, slavery is dead. Colonialism is also dead. But in its place, today, we have something that is even worse than colonialism and slavery. We have neocolonialism, and we also have huge debt bondage on the African country's neck. As I speak to you today, the entire 54 African country is owing $1 trillion in terms of public debt. 20% of this is owed to China, which came as a result of the China influence in Africa in the last 15 years. It's true that slavery is dead, but there is a new form of slavery in turn. We have brain drain, the best of our brain, the best of African brains, the best of Nigerian brains, best of Ghanaian brains, best of Cameroon brains. They are all outside the shores of Africa. And this is why One Africa Initiative has decided to have this event today. Let us look critically where we were coming from, where we are today, and where we are headed. For today's event, we have 5 speakers spread across the world. We have Professor Iga from France, who is already in the studio. We have Professor Ochefu. We have Richard from Alabama, who is in another African attire there. We have Lunga from South Africa, and we have Daniel Kamanga also from South Africa. We also have all our participants from all over the world joining us from Canada, from Dublin, and from all over. Also, we have people from African Union also in the house joining us today. It's my pleasure to welcome all of us here today. I want us to make it very engaging, very participatory. It's not going to be a monologue, it's going to be a dialogue. It's Africa, and the future of Africa is in our hands. AU has set a target date of 2063 as the day of, let's call it final freedom for Africa. We believe that the dream of 2063 is possible, but if it's got to be, it depends on us. And that's why we're having this program today. With me in the house today that will coordinate the program, we have John, who is the communication head, the team lead for OAI Communication. And we also have Chris, who is on the editorial board of One Africa Journal. The two of them will coordinate the event, and then we are going to take questions after the end of the program. But after every speaker will speak for about 15 minutes, and then we'll take 1 or 2 questions. But the bigger questions session will come after the end of the program. I want us to relax. Let's enjoy ourselves. And for our speakers, I really thank you for the time you put in. Professor Yakubu didn't watch the match yesterday because he was putting his papers together. Sorry about that, but Africa first. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice time. John, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. Good day, everyone joining us from whichever part of the world you're joining us. It's indeed a pleasure to be here again to discuss issues that affect us as people of African descent. We've deemed it necessary to examine some of the challenges that we face as members of the quote and unquote Black race. What are the things stopping us from achieving our full potentials? We know Africa lags behind other continents in several areas. So today, we're going to be examining some of these things, and we're going to be charting the way forward for Africa. Now, I'll just run you through how the session for today will go. Tim has given us a brief intro. I'm sure somewhere down the line, he will tell you a little bit more about One Africa initiative. We'll have 5 speakers, like he rightly said. We'll begin with Professor Ochefu, who is our first speaker for today. He'll speak for 15 minutes, after which we'll take a 1-minute break, and then we'll bring on board our second speaker, Professor Iga, who is joining us from France. We'll take another interlude for like a minute or so, and then we'll bring in Richard Akinyemi Ezeagu, who is joining us from Alabama in the US of A. Our fourth speaker is Daniel Kamanga. He's not a stranger to One Africa initiative. He's part and parcel of the organization, and has been very, very involved in championing the African cause. Lastly, but last but not the least, as we'll say, we'll take Lunga, who is joining us from South Africa. He's young, he's fiery, he represents the new breed of Africa and Africans, and he'll be sharing his own perspective, which I think to a large extent will represent the kind of thinking which we expect from African youths going forward. So at this juncture, I'd like to pause and say we would, like Tim said also, take questions at the end of the session. We want the sessions to flow seamlessly. So as much as possible, we're not going to break it with questions, but whatever question you have, please note it down, or you can drop it in the chat box, and we'll take it when it's time for question and answer. Once again, it's good to have you with us, and we look forward to a very enlightening and engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Once again, you're welcome. My name is Chris Adetayo. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our guest speakers today. Our first speaker comes with a long years of experience. Professor Yakubu Aboki Ochefu is an academic, university administrator, and also has spent part of his time as an entrepreneur. He's got over 30 years of experience, trained in multiple universities in Nigeria and abroad. He's a former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Benue State University. He's been Vice Chancellor, University of, former Vice Chancellor, Kwararafa University in Nigeria, and also a former National President, Historical Society of Nigeria. He is currently the National President, University of Calabar Alumni Association, and more importantly, is also the Secretary General. Is also the Secretary General of the Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities. He is based in Nigeria and will be spending the next 15 minutes taking us through what he sees as the pathway to economic stability of Africa, using the AFCFTA option as a pathway for Africa's success. Professor Ochefu, you're very much welcome. We appreciate your presence today, and you have 15 minutes to share your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, OAI family. Thank you to Tim. Congratulations to us all on as we celebrate Africa Day. I'm delighted to be part of this event and to be asked to share some of my thoughts with this esteemed audience. I'd actually written a very technical paper, the type of paper we academics like to write. But when Tim told me I had 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, this is very interesting. But more important, when we're having the conversation on how difficult it is to travel from one part of Africa to another, I felt that that would be a good point to trigger this conversation. And I remember some of our members had complained how expensive it was to move from one location to another by air. You are doing 8 hours to Europe, it's costing you so little, and you are doing 2 hours to another part of Africa, and it's costing you 3, 4, 5 times the cost. And they are telling you it is because of the traffic, which simply means that there's something going on that says there's not much traffic, there's not much trade going on amongst ourselves. You know, as a professional economic historian, the historical evidence does not support that assertion, because if you look at the historical evidence, a lot of economic activities were going on between African peoples at the formal and informal sector long before colonialism came, during colonialism, and long after the colonialists departed. Africans have had a long history of trading amongst themselves. The critical difference here is that majority of the inter-African trade that is going on falls within the category of what economists refer to as informal trade, and so doesn't get properly captured within government records. And because they don't use the popular vehicles and highways and that we commonly use, they are not captured, they are not registered, and they are not recognized. And so it's a good place to begin that conversation from that. If Africans at the informal level are trading amongst themselves, if traders are carrying kola nut from Ghana and taking to Kano, Ijaw fishermen are fishing across the West Africa, trading in all sorts of fishing vehicles. I recall that while I was teaching at the University of Calabar, there was a popular boat that was used by what we refer to as smugglers called African Pekin, that used to ply its trade from Oron port as far as Gabon and Angola. You know, this was in the 90s, in the late 80s and early 90s. So there was a lot of riverine traffic that was going on, hogging the coastline to move commodities from one part of Africa to another. So what the African Continental Free Trade Area has actually done is to legitimize transactions that have been going on for considerable length of time. And I think it provides an opportunity for our policymakers to look at how we can leverage on trading activities that has been going on from historical times to embed them with the new opportunities that the AFCFTA has provided, to see how we can increase the tempo of integration in Africa, as it were. Now, when you look at the Agenda 2063, from 2014, when the clock started ticking, we've done nearly, with 3 years to the first 10-year implementation plan. We have 3 years to the actualization of the 10-year implementation plan. And I think it is important for us to look at what has happened in the last 7 years to see whether considerable progress is being made or has been made, as the case may be. And then thereafter, we can then say what should be done or what can we do as far as boosting the trade relationship. I'm happy, I heard Tim said some gentlemen from the African Union that are in the house, and they will probably be shedding some light in some of the conversations that we're going to be having today. that after the African Free Trade Continental Area has made Africa the center of trade and the second largest trading hub in the world is no longer in doubt. So, and that everybody is now looking to see how they can penetrate our trading network is also something that we have to prepare ourselves. We've had a long history of trading with foreigners. Throughout from the 15th century, Africa had all sorts of trading relationships with people from outside the continent, you know. But our own internal trade has also been there, but has not been given the recognition that it deserves. The other thing that we also need to take into consideration is the fact that the efforts by the AU Assembly using the platform called BIAT, that is boosting inter-African trade, you know, to ensure that we break down some of these barriers that we've talked about that have limited trading within African countries, is also something that that our leadership must develop the political will to do so. If you look at the way our current trading relationship is structured, you have big businesses from South Africa coming to do business in West Africa. You have big businesses from West Africa going to do business in Central and Eastern Africa and Southern Africa. You know, very few businesses from North Africa coming to West Africa and going to other parts of Africa. So you have a sort of let me say malnourished structure of trading that does not facilitate the type of big grand vision that our African leadership has in mind. And of course, like I've said, how do we facilitate formal and informal trade among citizens of the member countries? You know, are buyers and sellers within the continent able to conveniently pay for goods and services from one country to another, given the nature and character of our monetary structures? So if I engage in an informal trade relationship with somebody that is using a different currency structure, the only unifying currency that we have is are all foreign. Is either we revert to the dollar or revert to the pound, as the case may be. So it's important that while we are thinking through this whole process, some of the basic nitty-gritties are very important. And so knowing fully well that we don't have a lot of time, I like to focus on some of the things that I think we should be looking at, we should be doing in order to drive this whole process forward. First thing is that we must understand that our development trajectory as a continent will be different from the trajectory that Europeans used between the 15th century and the 19th century. Africa does not have any part of the world that it can enslave. Neither does it have any part of the world that it can colonize and appropriate resources for its own development. You know, we were victims of that type of development, and we cannot grow using that platform anymore. So that is what will drive the need for us to come together to trade extensively amongst ourselves. Our development trajectory has to be built on models that are scalable, both in micro and mini forms that capture the elements that are available to us. And let me use telecommunications as example. You recall that by the turn of the last century, the number of telecommunication lines that were available to people in Africa was extremely limited because the cost of building landlines and fiber optic networks were horribly expensive. Then came mobile, you know, and Africa was able to use mobile technology. In fact, it was the deployment of mobile technology that really revolutionized what we now have as mobile communications. So it was Africa went through the mobile route and not the landline and fiber route that other European countries built on, and were able to scale the communication challenges that we have in Africa. Where the same thing we are using telecommunications, non-banking, alternative banking platforms to also solve our banking challenges. Africa is underbanked. There are not too many physical banks that are available, but we've been able to leverage on technology, on mobile technology, to deepen the content of our banking situations and using alternative financial models. The same way we are also solving our power challenges. We're not building nuclear power plants and massive hydropower plants to solve rural reach. We are using renewable energy based on mini hydros, micro hydros, and solar solutions to solve our telecommunication, our power situation. The point I'm making is that the model that other parts of the world used and is not necessarily the model that we are going to use. We have to use those resources that are available to us. And I think if we leverage on technology to ensure that we create a seamless payments platform that enables people in the informal sector to trade amongst themselves, will be deepening the content of the financial transactions across the African continent. If we are waiting to build the type of structure, the type of financial or banking structure that is available to the rest of the world, will probably not take advantage of what is happening, because inter-African trade, like I've mentioned earlier on, is a lot of it exists in the informal sector, and we must recognize this fact and see how we can make investments in that informal sector to bring out the best of trading relationships between Africans and within Africa. So that is the area I would like us to look at it as in terms of solutions that are available to us as far as African free trade continental area is concerned. Good evening, team and members.
Thank you, Prof. That's quite enlightening. I like your approach, because what you have done now is you have set the tone for our conversations this evening. The economic prosperity of Africa begins when Africans begin to trade amongst themselves, when we recycle our resources on the continent first, instead of immediately exporting it as soon as we get it. So what you have looked at, and I think it's very, very critical, when you looked at the area of trade, a lot of trade happens within the continent amongst Africans, but like you have rightly said, a lot of it is in the informal sector, so it's not really captured because they don't flow through structured financial institutions. The magnitude and the volume is not adequately captured. And you've talked about leveraging technology to improve on trade within African countries and Africans. There was something you said when you began. You talked about trade between the various regions, and you mentioned North Africa. That North Africa seems not to be trading with the rest of Africa, and that caught my attention because it's something. If we're talking of Africa, it has to be Africa completely, or there's no. I mean, it's not Africa if the northern part of Africa is not integrated into it. So what comes to my mind is, why is this so? Because I know they do a lot of trade and trading amongst with European countries and even with other Arab countries. Is it because they see themselves more as Arabs and Africans, or why do you think that is the case, Prof?
Now, historically,
Prof, maybe you can take the two questions together.
Okay.
Yes. When you talk about the volume of trade, even within ourselves in West Africa, if the last time I was in Ghana, I was privileged to taste the Ghana chocolate. And it was extremely good, extremely rich. But the funny aspect of the whole situation is that where Africa takes a position in the lower end of the value chain, which is the cocoa business. Cocoa business globally today is about $5 billion. The chocolate business today, as of 2020, was $130 billion. So the chocolate business is in the hands of the Swiss, the British, and the Americans. And of recent, about 2 months ago, Chinese they've also joined the chocolate business in the sense that they've started planting their own cocoa and they want to take over the entire chocolate business. My question is, what should we be doing to ensure that if, as Africans, we see Ghana chocolate as our chocolate in Nigeria, in Kenya, in South Africa, and not as Ghana chocolate? Because except we accept what we produce in Africa, we are 1.3 billion people in Africa, the size of India and almost the size of China, which means if Ghana as a country focuses just on cocoa and chocolate, it will be making more money, twice the amount of money Nigeria is making from oil, assuming all of us in Africa patronize it. Let's even assume that Europe refuses to buy Ghana chocolate. But if the 1.3 billion people in Africa see Ghana chocolate as African chocolate, then the business following Ghana will increase, unemployment will disappear. So my question to you, Prof, is this: what must African leaders start doing to ensure that we accept what our sister African countries produce and we take ownership of it as African products? Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, Tim, let me do the type of thing that they accuse Nigerians of doing, that when you ask a Nigerian a question, he responds by asking you his own question. What did our leaders do to make Nigerian movies, Ghana movies, Kenya movies, and music popular across the continent? What did they do?
Government did nothing.
Okay.
They did absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
But the people found that the music that was coming, the movies that were coming from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Kenya, the music that was coming from there, the fashion statements that were coming from there, were things that were absorbed across the continent. So there is no part of our continent today that you will not enjoy music, dance, food, all those aspects of popular culture. So what it means is that we need to consciously begin to put some of these economic items, like chocolate that you have mentioned, within the realm of popular culture. Once you begin to make that investment in popular culture and see some of the things that ordinarily will not catch your attention, because when you think about it, Tim, eating of chocolate is not really our thing. It's an elitist thing within the continent. When you think of it critically, it's not a mass activity. So how do we then transform chocolate into a commodity that has that type of mass social appeal within our continent? This is where some of our critical thinking caps need to be put on. I don't know whether you get the point I'm making, Tim. Hello, did you hear me that? Yes.
Yes, sure. We're on the same page.
Yes, okay. And then for the first question that was asked, in terms of the type of trading relationship between North Africa and the rest of Africa, West Africa has had a very robust trading relationship with their North African counterparts going back centuries, even though some aspects of that trade was quite murky and stuff like that. But when they talk about the leather from Morocco, the pure leather, red leather from Morocco, a lot of that was coming from Kano, from the leather markets in Kano. So a lot of salt, a lot of phosphate, a lot of potash was going back and forth across the Sahara. But in recent times, and again, you have to understand that a lot of it is driven by the numbers, is driven by economic situation. The Mediterranean coast is just 2 hours away from North Africa. The opportunities are there, the businesses are there, the numbers are there, the rewards are there. So it makes a lot of sense for an entrepreneur who has an eye on profits and not on a sentimental attachment to a continent, to put his things across the Mediterranean Sea and get the rewards that he wants. If we're able to create the same type of opportunities across the Sahara down this way, I'm sure they will all respond, because that is one other thing that we also need to think of, that our response to economic impulses will not be driven purely by sentiments. The numbers also have to add up. You know, we have to make the business conducive and lucrative in a conscious manner, using policy, and that is where government comes in, using policy to drive some of those variables that will make this trade lucrative for our entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. It's quite enlightening. So we'll take a 1 minute break, and when we return, we'll be taking our second speaker, Professor Iga, who is joining us today from France. Please stay tuned.